Thank you guys for being here. We'd love to just get the requisite, origin story question out of the way for each of you before we go a little deeper, but just how you each came to this project. Kirsten, and we start with you because I think that even though this goes back well before Power of the Dog with you and Jane. How did you guys first cross paths?
Well, Jane was a fan of the Virgin Suicides and met Sophie in LA, and she then liked Marie Antoinette as well. So she wrote me, I have it in my phone actually, she wrote me a letter in the shape of a swan. And I guess someone took a picture of it and sent it to me, but I still have it in my phone about doing the short Alice Munro short story called Runaway together that she wanted to workshop, but it clearly didn't come to fruition. But eventually, yeah, I kept it in my phone like a little witch. And we have the same birthday, Jane and I, so maybe I conjured something up there.
Nice.
Jesse got the script of this film before I did.
Well, I was just going to ask, so I mean, if people don't know, you're not only on-screen but off-screen partners, and Jesse, so I wondered how that worked. Did you, just when did you hear about this?
Boy, I can't remember the date. It was before COVID, and I got the script and told Kirsten, meeting with Jane Campion. She was like, "You're doing that movie." And I read the script, which was incredible. I met with her while she was in town, and it was still really early in the process, and through many twists and turns, the timing wasn't going to work, and then things shifted around, and all of a sudden Kirsten was doing it, and it circled back around to me, and I was available, and I did it.
Nice. Kodi, you're the one member of this cast who's actually from Jane's neck of the woods.
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with how you guys know each other?
I wish it was that easy. No, I mean, I've always admired her from afar for many reasons, obviously beyond that, but primarily because of that also. But I've been based in LA, so that's where the material is, and my team wants me, so I received this script in the general kind of way that you do. But I mean, finding out Jane was attached to it, I absolutely fell in love with the subject matter and fell in love with Peter and all of the challenges that I guess he holds in being so internalized. And yeah, I mean, the audition process was really, it was so ideal. I wasn't necessarily like cattle call LA audition. It was more of like an improv session and a general conversation with Jane. There was no real time limit or pressure felt in the presence of her. And that was something I really adored, and we had fun. We had fun.
And just I guess an interesting note is how many of you guys here have been acting since very young ages. Kodi, I mean, I don't know, maybe it was even earlier than The Road, but The Road's 12 years ago, and that's, I think, when I first.
Yeah, that was kind of my first American production.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been doing it since I was about 8 years old.
Wow.
In Australia. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So Benedict, was this a book that was on your radar before Jane reached out?
No, not at all. But it blew me away. I mean, I got the script. I think I read that first, and then I think I read this book first. I know she was interested, and just dove into this insanely beautiful novel. It's just a very, very rich mind to sort of dwell in if you're building the character of Phil Burbank. And then I met her, having then read the script, and was utterly entranced by her take on it. And then I always thought it was sort of a conversation, so we just sort of sat down and had coffee, and she showed me a lookbook, talked about the sensuality, what she wanted to expose, and the kind of transgressions of the trope of a Western, and this type of toxic masculine character with this incredible sort of secret that's twisting you into a press of fear and hatred, and what that vulnerability is in Phil. And I was just entranced, and we had a lovely conversation, first of what it has been ever since, many, and I said at the end, this is amazing. I mean, are we doing this? Are we doing this? She went, yeah, I just want to read my Phil. I was like, thank you, Jane. And I was, she's the only one who thinks I took a good person. And then I kind of got off from that and just got on the phone to Major. I think I've just been offered the part. She rang when that sign spoke to Tanya Sagat. She went, "They just offered Benedict the role." So, like all things with her, you know, there's all this preparation, and then there's this sort of space like Kodi's describing where things just are allowed to breathe and happen, and that was the first.
Well, from that conversation, for you, Benedict, or for any of you, I wonder if you can pinpoint what it was that attracted this great female filmmaker from New Zealand to a tale of toxic masculinity in the West. And it's not something that is necessarily obvious, but I'm imagining she conveyed that to you guys. What do you believe that was that made her want to do this? Yeah, if you can start.
Oh, sorry. Well, I mean, you know, I think that theme is, that's a river that runs through all of her work, to be honest, I feel. And I just think however it takes place, there's the interior, there's the domesticity, there's the house that becomes the house of horrors in a lot of her work, there's the landscape, there's the character in a lot of her work. And whether it's female protagonists who are suffering at the hands of toxic male protagonists, you know, yes. But there's also a lot of inversion of that trope, I feel, in this film as well. So it didn't feel, you know, people talk about it a lot. I don't know any different. I haven't been in any other Jane Campion films. Because what's it like to be the first one? I don't know really what it's like, because I can just tell you the experience. And you know, we all know a few actors who've been in some of our other projects, and it's, I think, a similar journey that she goes on. You know, I'd say from my character's point of view, and the subject of toxic masculinity that he encounters, what's good about it is you look under the hood of this person and start to understand why he is the way he is, rather than dismissing it as something that is survived or suffered by somebody at the receiving end of the behavior, to try and maybe open that conversation a little bit. Not that she did this for, you know, a social talking point, but I guess that is a takeaway from the film, is to understand the whys and the wherefores, and to have the dialogue, the conversation, to be aware of it in our parenting, our society, and our general way of being, so that we can be on the lookout for it. And I try to tackle it as a root rather than continually seeing it surface in every aspect of culture, from world leaders to domestic violence and it all. That would be a great place to move towards, but Jane should really answer this question.
I did hear her say it was something that was just given to her, not with the thought of adapting it, but it was just something that she said she couldn't shake, you know, which I think, you know, is what you're always looking for, something that just sort of embeds itself into your mind, and I think she just felt like she had to do it.
Yeah. So there was a lot of work, from what I understand, that went on before you guys ever got to set, and Jesse, I learned prepping for this that you are actually quite adept at horse riding prior to this project. I guess it's something in your family that happens. But for the rest of you guys, was this maybe you can share some of the skills that you had to develop? I mean, I've heard about a number of them, and it's pretty impressive. So I guess if we want to come down the line, Benedict, I mean, so were you doing much horse riding before this?
I've been in warhorse, so we did
Yeah,
a very different style of riding, so it did feel new. I had a really easy horse. I mean, look, Jesse is a great horseman, but without bringing the subject up of his horse yet again, I'm slightly technical, I can cauterize it right now if you want. He basically had to ride a horse that was almost unrideable, so
Wow.
It was a plow horse.
But I definitely, I learned so much, and it's a Western style, it's different, and but yeah, Phil's story adapted so many things, it was quite daunting, alone, let alone trying to dig deep into the psyche of this character. Whittling, whistling, castration. It's on the list, yeah. Castration. Rolling cigarettes in one hand, and horseback, that's really tricky. Well, any regard as well as he does it in the book. But all important, not just attributes or like, oh look at me shit, it's also kind of really integral to sort of balance the brutal and the sensitive within this human form. You know, he's really admired for things that you'd imagine a man wanting to portray strength, and everything that he submits, or sorry, puts on other people and oppresses other people with is normally to show him being good at whittling, something very delicate and small, and although he uses it as a tool to denigrate his poor brother, it requires a real finesse of work. It's not ironmongery. So even within that, there's a sort of hint as to what lies beneath, and so that was important. It was important to be in his body, to know what it felt like to be on a horse as much as he had over his 25 years of running that ranch with his brother, and making the rope, treating the hide, braiding, all of it. And I had an amazing, our job's so cool. And on top of it, I got to go to Montana and learn all this stuff. And it's really good.
For the others, I wonder if whether it was a skill or a certain amount of research, certain types of things to learn about 1920s Montana is not something too many of us are very familiar with. I wonder, Kirsten, what did you feel you could knock out beyond the script before you got there?
Oh, piano, or
Yeah.
Jesse,
Yeah.
and all of our friends. I had a cool piano teacher though. He works with Julian Casablancas, so I had like a hip piano teacher, which was nice. Because my first piano teacher was the choir, the lead of the choir. It's in church, so that's very different. This teacher, you could have he hung with us, right? I mean, but yeah, I put our son to bed and then just get to it. And I just do one hand, and the other hand. And when I first got both hands together, I think I cried to God, like, thank you. It's just learning an instrument that you can't become proficient at an instrument that quickly. And so you kind of have to do the, what would you call it? Just super speed, every night, any chance you can, get on the piano, So that, Jane doesn't even know how to play the piano. So it's just like in all of her movies, and I'm just this immense pressure. I was like, okay, piano. But it is the big scene between both of our characters. It just shows, him trumping me with this beautiful artistry that he commands, and that I'll never be able to, in what I use in my own, psyche for playing, is that I'll never be like that kind of artist that he is. And so that in itself, just like as a performer, is like a crushing feeling that you'll never be the artist that you like to be.
That would probably look like because that piano playing is way, way better than my banjo.
And
It sounds
antique
like an
banjo
underhand
is not really
Kirsten,
something
isn't
you
it?
can like
No,
snap in.
I was very impressed. You have to draw back.
I had one thing to learn. You had a lot of things to learn.
Jesse, maybe if you'll share a bit about your past with horses, but also anything else that you were working on.
Yeah, I grew up riding horses. I grew up in Central Texas, and my dad's side of the family, they all ride and rope, and so there's home movies of a year-old being placed on top of a horse. And yeah, it was just something that was second nature, but it wasn't really all that integral to George, because he's sort of, as Phil is sort of clinging to the past, George is kind of more interested in these new automobiles, it was definitely just getting to sort of, in a way, play cowboy and work on a ranch. It was a lot of fun. We had a great consultant that sort of walked us through what the year cycle is, just so we had kind of an understanding of that. But there wasn't nearly as much required of me in that way as these two.
I mean, the same goes for me. I had to learn some cute, delicate kind of stuff to do with my hands and patience and things like that. But I mean, any other skill that Peter picks up, he has to look like an amateur in doing. So that wasn't hard for me.
So I have previously asked Kirsten about this. I'm going to come back to you about just how this little pandemic that we've been through affected this project. It was. I think it was pretty crazy timing as far as what you guys all were dealing with, so can you let us know when it hit? Yeah, Kirsten.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, like all of us,
Yeah.
we all stopped work, so
This
that's what
was
we all
a-
did, and we all washed our groceries before we.
You were in New Zealand?
We decided to stay in New Zealand because that was when everyone was getting on a plane, and we had our child with us, and none of us knew, so we stayed in New Zealand for a month, went back home to LA, and then eventually when Jacinda got New Zealand under control, which I think if we hadn't shot anywhere else, we might not have finished the film. I mean, maybe, yeah, I don't really know, it would have taken a lot longer, yeah.
She really had the best response in the world, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah, I mean, even that Jesse and I were allowed back in the country, I mean, we quarantined for 2 weeks, but all of this stuff is
With
like.
a 2-year-old in the hotel room.
You realize though that they're not going to remember this. It's
No,
just,
we,
it's
yeah.
you remember that.
Oh, gosh, I just remember begging them to be like, can we just use maybe a conference or some other room that's so we can go somewhere. So it's just we're going to a playroom, doing something else, but in
One day when some trip had been cancelled because they just said no, and it was literally down the hall, possibly a bit of fresh air, and no, so the world, it was really amazing what we went through.
But again, it's not anything,
Not
deserved
anything
to us.
And we got to actually work for a month, which was amazing, to actually be doing something. I remember coming home and my friends were like, oh my God, you got a break.
Yeah.
It's I know, it was so weird, we went out to dinner and, whatever, it just, my son went to the grocery store for the first time in so long, he was like, avocado! And then back to, back home.
So I want to ask pairs of people some things. Let's start with Jesse and Benedict. I wonder how much you guys got into the backstory of your characters, anything about Bronco Henry in particular that you felt it would be helpful for you both to know, even if it's more than the audience knows, because as Jane has said, he's almost like a ghost hovering over this whole movie. So I just wonder if there was anything more that you guys established about your past with Bronco.
I didn't want to know what George knew about it, but obviously I have to create an entire love about an entire relationship, an entire moment of history that has basically shaped this character ever since. In the book, since he saw at the age of 19 being trampled to death in a corral. So, yeah, a lot of work, letters to and fro, in character, sort of hot seating conversations about him, with Jane, my sort of psychologist, psychologist. And yeah, it was hugely important. And it's weird, one of the first things we did when we got together in London after that Oliver beautiful moment, the first meeting, was to go around the National Portrait Gallery, and I knew what she was up to. I said, so, you want to find him, right? And she went, and I then got very hung up on the idea of well, is it just some weird identity, or can it be vague? And so I took it back, and then you just start asking yourself how much you remember of dear people that have been close to you in real detail from the age of 19, and it's kind of troubling, because we have this thing called the internet, to really, really force yourself into that, to know how clear your recall will be, or how impressionistic. For me, it was more about the essence of the man, what he brought out in me, and that required a lot of work. Just did some of that, but just can't speak.
We did discuss our history at length, and we did discuss sort of everything leading up to when things shifted, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I did make some decisions as to how much I knew, but I think it almost, even knowing just a little bit, that's still more than Phil would like any human being to know. And so that was what was the most interesting thing, not that George sort of had him, had something on him, but knew him, and in a way that no one else did, and had somehow compassion for that, given the way Phil was treated for all these years. So.
Next pair I want to go to is Kirsten and Jesse. I believe you have, with before, right, acted together before, but here to be playing romantic partners in a film, but with obviously a very different dynamic. Kirsten, you talked a little bit about how there's a moment where Jane intervened about one idea, but just I wonder if you can talk about just working together in that way, and then also what do you do when you go home? Do you still talk about it? Do you not talk about it? Do you all that? So just
I talk about it. Like, this is what happened today. I feel like playing Rose, it left me in a more insecure place, so having Jesse there just to like have lunch with, or just to come home and have someone know exactly what you're going through is something that is amazing to have at work. And he's my favorite actor to work with, so it's
She's not people too.
And Jesse, I mean, either of you can, I heard this story from Kirsten, but I'm sure either of you can talk about just like the way that you are with each other is obviously going to be different than the way these characters are, and there was I guess a gentle reminder of that at one point.
It was brief, it was like.
it was just like, I
one
hooked his
moment.
arm.
Yeah.
I went like this.
With
And
the-
she was like, that's a little familiar. So we had to make sure we kept our formal distance.
But that's the easy part, it's like that, the fact that we had all of that underneath these two characters and just needing the occasional reminder was very easy.
We don't have too much chemistry, right?
Let's go now to Benedict and Kirsten. Obviously Phil torments Rose, and I wonder how you guys chose to interact during the shoot with each other, or not to interact.
I remember almost saying hi to you once, like in the hallway, and I was like, hi. Keep walking.
Jane was, she introduced me as well at the beginning of the shoot to her whole career, and these guys were so helpful for just letting me go there, and we tried to stay out of each other's way. We get on very well. We had lovely weekends together with our families and stuff, and we were good friends. But it was work, and it's a short period of time. And actually, for the amount of animosity that is present, a lot of it wasn't in person. Kirsten had to manifest a lot of it off screen. So there's really only that meeting. Well, there's obviously the dining room scene in the beginning. I'm sort of unaware of it. I'm not targeted on her until she comes into the house, and that's the one. It's the welcome. It's that one. Yeah, it's standing right there. You know what I mean? That scene. That's kind of it. Basically, that's kind of it.
Other than that, it's like, oh, a haunting sound or boots on the floor, but that's not really something that would, trigger me personally. So it was just about creating what it is that, frightens me. The things that would make me spin out if I was in a circumstance, in my own house of horrors.
And it's brilliant. I'm not the kind of actor that even if you ask me, I find it I have to stop apologising and doing people places. James told me to be just be him. He's for that. But I can't sort of help someone or think I'm helping someone by being an absolute arsehole to them in a scene that doesn't even exist. You know what I mean? I'm not that guy. So we just stuck to the promises, and Kirsten had to do the whole thing.
Well, and one of those things, Kirsten, was it wasn't just not very much engaging with Benedict, but it was just sometimes not engaging with anyone, right? For vocal reasons, I guess.
Oh yeah, I did do that one day, because we had this big dinner scene, so I didn't talk so much, because she's supposed to be so overwhelmed, and, you kind of see it when Jesse hands me the whole tray of cocktails. But honestly, the line it was cut out, I think, but the first time I spoke in that scene, remember, I choked on my words, so I kind of made the choice just not to speak so much that day, so I felt small in my own, even in speaking, because Rose is obviously very different than me, and she's very, she's just swallowing a lot of feelings instead of expressing them. So she, that's the big scene where she decides to take a drink of alcohol, and that's gonna be her way to cope in the house.
Last of these combo questions is for Benedict and Kodi. I guess, obviously you know from the script, from the book what's going on in or what needs to go on in these, what needs to be communicated in these scenes, sort of the subtext. I guess I just wonder, if you co-strategize about how to approach those things, or if you just kind of run it, you go into the scene and let it fly.
I feel like the 2 weeks Jane boot camp that we had together it was a great time to do that. Sometimes it was rehearsing with the whole ensemble, and other times intimately just with Jane, and many of the times just with Benedict and I. And yeah, that was a good time to return to those pivotal scenes that we remember in the movie so well. Like, the catwalk scene, I call it, when he's walking to the tree and he walks back. These were, thank you. Thank you. No, these were scenes where we just created an environment in which we got to share our ideas about it, and Jane did, I feel, have very specific ideas that she wanted to convey, and it was just about solidifying the freedom, I guess, to explore those on the day as well.
I really, like you were saying, there were certain actions, there were certain parameters, but I did think she wanted to be surprised somehow, so that when we do come together after that moment of rage at the highs being taken away, that you don't quite know where it's going to go, and then that dance is very fluid. The power play is shifting all the time. The level of seduction, we're way past the point where recruiting him might be weaponizing him against the mother, and possibly even to take him away from the picture altogether. But it solidifies into something which obviously echoes the tutor, the pupil relationship with Bronco and Phil. But oh God, it's a long time ago. If I'm honest, I felt at the time, if I can remember correctly, there was a lot of slippage, and we would talk about it sometimes because we were in sync as characters by that point. There was such a proximity; it wasn't about keeping a distance. But I remember us just sort of supporting each other as actors and not talking about what we did, but just egging each other on to give more. And Jane was very much like that, but the cigarette passing was very much her thing. There were words that I did not want to say, so we cut them. I felt that was just something that, she's a master of cinematic poetry and sensual cinema making, so just go to that rather than the page for this moment. And she agreed with me, which was a rare thing, but she didn't agree with me. I was still quite but it just let us kind of find it. I think I remember right.
Yeah, no, definitely. She can be very dualistic in that way. In her guidance, very specific about certain things, whether they be actions or the way you walk or say something, but then the rest of it is left up to the freedom of intuition.
Kodi and I had a good secret.
Yeah, we did.
Please?
Yeah.
You want to share?
I think the first time I met you, right?
Yes.
I was like, hey, Kodi, you want to have a secret together? I was like, what if you killed your father, my husband, and that's our secret? Just to give an extra layer of weirdness to the mother-son relationship, which we didn't tell Jane or anything.
No, we didn't. We wanted to keep that as just a thing that we could, play with, but it's come up quite a bit. In fact, it came up at the Q&A last night.
Oh, really?
They continuously asked about
Where
it. So I
somebody speculates that that's what happened?
It is translated.
See, it got into everyone's unconscious mind. I have a question. Is our name Philip? There he is. I thought I saw him.
Kodi, you had said in another conversation that Peter doesn't change over the course of the film, it's the audience's perception of him that changes. You want to elaborate on that?
Yes, I've been a lot more elaborative in my past Q&As. I'm so sorry about dragging up here a bit, but that was one of my peak explanations there. But no, that's why I adore Peter so much. He's so internalized, and it really forces the whole audience or whoever's reading it. And for me, it was that personal journey of reading it myself. It's so beautiful to see now translated into everyone's experience in watching it, which is that we judge him, and we judge many characters in the story right off the bat, which is something I think we all hold ourselves to. We don't do these days, but you have to when you're trying to decide for where a story is going and what it's doing to you. So, yeah, there's a lot of judgment in the narrative of Peter specifically when I was reading it in terms of conveying it and expressing him as an actor. And I just absolutely adored how within the last few pages for me, it was all recontextualized completely. I had to go back and I went right back to the beginning and read it all again and tried to dissect it to see where he made these decisions, where he made these choices, and still, in a very beautiful way, there's still a great deal of ambiguity cloaking him, even when you go through and watch it again. I mean, you can't really choose specifically where you think he's made these choices. He really acts on the moment, and he improvises. He has his tools there, but he's never set anything in stone. So I think it was a lot of fun to play. Yeah.
Can I say one moment that I haven't brought up? In that 2 weeks boot camp with Jane, where she sort of put us all together, and we worked through different scenarios. And one of the scenarios was okay, you and Rose are having lunch, and this is Peter's first meal with you as stepson and stepfather. It's like improvising, and it's like awkward as it should be, and then it was a line that I really wish would have made it in the movie, but at the end, he just goes, "Oh yeah, if you see any rats, let me know." And from that moment on, I was like, this guy's gonna be fantastic.
So I guess just as a final thing, Benedict, you started to talk about sort of the big picture implications of the story with toxic masculinity, and maybe this gets to the, I guess, do we feel that the driver of it is pretty consistently going to be, maybe not necessarily this specific form of repression, but something being buried that drives people to act out in that way? Or I guess I want to deal with that, and just anything else that you would hope, each of you, that people take away from this film. So Benedict, if you want to start.
It's a biggie. I would say it's about love. It's about the absence of love, about being restricted from being able to be loved and to express love, really. And I think that is, so it's getting very meta armchair psychologist about it, but I think beyond the very specific, as you said, circumstances of his repression, I think that is what is apparent. And you see also this world in which strength is so kind of paradigm and archetype being completely inverted, with Peter's strength being the strongest, and whatever we encompass and whatever our failings are, rich realized characters. But it's like I think that's the takeaway. It's like, be true to yourself and hope for love, and do not fear the judgment of others. It's put far more beautifully in the book and in acres of literature, and what we, I think, all know in this room makes sense. It's about love.
Kirsten, would you add anything?
It's pretty good, right? This is about having a great time at the movies. To be able to see a new Jane Campion film after 12 years is a real treat.
Yeah, that's great. Especially for me to get harder as we go down the line. I mean, it is nice to just be in a movie, right? And with other people. I guess that's
The community of cinema being back.
Yeah, right.
It's a really important thing. Yeah.
Those hot dogs.
Well, that's good. This place actually does not bad ones.
I was like, I ate, but.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you guys so much, and great to meet you.